And to that piece of lieutenant that's always on his podcast, bashing us, yeah.
The roll call.
Outstanding. Good morning, everybody. How's everybody doing? Make sure you post change and you show up right now for New York's Finest Retired Unfiltered podcast. Listen, what do you do for Thanksgiving? You get ready for tomorrow?
I'm doing whatever my boss tells me to do, bro. I'm buying cakes. I'm buying everything you need, Then I'll be taking the Christmas stuff down, all that. I'm late to put the Christmas, Whatever my 3-star chief tells me to do, I do,
Who's that, John Shell?
Yeah. Not that motherfucker.
All right, good morning, everybody. I see Ron Layson says it's 7 o'clock in the morning in the free state of Texas. So, Ron Layson, my brother, I don't know if you're traveling by RV also. So, good morning to you. Good morning, everybody. How you doing? And Franco, Sherry, Vic, Ray, Hassan, how we all doing? Amazing, Ant. Listen, let's get together. Let's get it. Let's get right into this. This is going to be a great one. Analysis of the DOI's report on the NYPD CRT unit. What is the CRT unit? Our active and retired members know. Anyone, if you're outside law enforcement or if you're a civilian, not law enforcement, CRT is the community response team for the NYPD. I like to refer to as the criminal response team. Those are your fine men and women running around in khaki pants. John, what are your thoughts?
So this the Department of Investigations, New York City. I often wonder what they do. So they put out this report about the CRT, the NYPD CRT, and the community response team. And, I'm like, wow, I'm curious to see what's on there. For years and years, we've been watching the demonization of the SRG unit, which is the Strategic Response Group, and state police protests, riots throughout New York City. And we've been watching the demonization of them. And I'm like, okay. When they attempted to pick apart SRG, and myself and Eric defended them both in city council, both in doing podcasts and writing articles about them, there was a lot of data available. The data came around how many arrests they made, how many complaints they had, how many of their complaints were substantiated. And basically what happened was, based upon the data provided, it showed that the Strategic Response Group was the best suited to police pop-up protests and riots, better suited than the rest of the entire police department, even though they used those numbers, even though they were attempting to utilize those numbers as a way to get rid of and abolish the SRG group. So I'm like, okay, DOI has done a report on the CRT now, on this CRT unit. Everyone wants to know who these kids, they call them the khaki pants kids, Shells Angels, some people call them, all these different things, Kaz's Angels, all these different nicknames these kids have, right? And I'm like, wow, I'm curious to see what's in this report. And I'm thinking it's going to focus on car pursuits. I'm thinking it's going to focus on their complaints and their arrests. Eric, what did you think it was going to be in here?
Well, you're spot on. I figured it would be about the pitfalls of the unit, right? What's going on negatively with the unit, what would be positive. We didn't hear much of that. But what I did like to see was there's a portion in there that talks about pretty much what's the application process. And according to the Inspector General report, they don't really understand how the police department works, the inner linings, the civil linings of the police department. So according to what they wrote in the report, it basically lays out that it's pretty much nepotism to get into the unit. Let me see if I can actually find this portion here. So
we'll go through the whole report, but I'm saying, like, what do you think should be in the report? Like, what do you want to see specifically? Like, what do you think? Like, if you're the public and they're gonna they're gonna say, like, all right, we're gonna do a report. Like, if you were DOI, if I was the mayor and you were DOI, and I'm like, Eric, I need you to do a whole workup on me on CRT. Like, what would you put in there?
Perfect. Well, that's what I was gonna say. So we're definitely going to get to the article. So there definitely should be laid out what's the process, what are the requirements and criteria to be into the CRT unit. What's the uniform for CRT? How many members are in that unit? So the report does lay out how many members are in that unit. What is the training to be in that unit? What are the qualifications? What are the tactics applied? What type of vehicles do they utilize? What type of equipment do they utilize? Who is comprised in that unit? So some of that stuff is in the report, and most of it is not. I think this report is very vague. We're going to go through the report, and you're going to see that. But I think it's missing a lot of information. Definitely, it should lay out what is the training manual? What is the path to go into this unit? What is the criteria? That is lacking in this report. Sleepy Joe, shout out to you. 511, what's $5.11? I guess Sleepy Joe's getting us a pair of 511 pants. This battle-hardened unit is a game changer for all the stakeholders in New York City. Morning, lieutenants. Love it, brother. Outstanding. Outstanding. It sure is a game changer. Not always in a positive light. But I will say this. If you have an opportunity, our friends and listen to the podcast, take a look. The Manhattan Magazine, John and I both wrote an article in regards to SRG, as John just laid out. I think it was the best defense for SRG, far better than we've seen from the upper echelon of the police department, which was pretty much none. We actually defended the SRG with data. We actually did a testimonial compound where we actually combated the information that was comprised from CCRB, from the city council, and actually utilized their own information, their own data to show that SRG was most suited for the protest, for the riots, and actually completely debunked the information that they put out and said most complaints were derived from SRG, which was completely false. So if you have an opportunity, look for that. The Manhattan Magazine was published by John and myself. Rich Rod, shout out to you, brother. $20 to the podcast. Here we go. Coffee and donuts. He says, have a happy Thanksgiving, everyone. Happy Thanksgiving to you. Rich Raj always dip into his pocket. So, John, what do you think about that? As far as laying out, should there be a training manual? Should there be tactics? And should this report lay out what is the path and criteria for a member of the service to be part of the CRT unit?
I think, I think a lot of this whole thing is all fluff. I think the CRT is it's literally borough crime. It's borough crime, anti-crime. That's all it is, So, and I think, the fact that there was no manual or training really highlights that, It really highlights that there is nothing in there in the patrol guide because they didn't feel like they needed to do anything because they already knew what it was. The problem, I think, with it, though, however, is, when you looked at the anti-crime teams, there were two stark differences between anti-crime and CRT. One's the uniform, right? Anti-crime ran around in plainclothes. They were plainclothes uniformed. They were plainclothes unit that ran around and did the same job that CRT did, right? Focus in on street crimes, focus in on quality of life complaints, really partake in proactive policing. So, other than the uniform, the other difference is that anti-crime teams were compromised of the best cops in the precinct. You earned your way to become an anti-crime cop, where we're seeing with the CRT teams, you're getting young, inexperienced cops to do very delicate work that requires very experienced, knowledgeable people. So is there a portion of nepotism that's related to the CRT teams? Yes. Is there a portion of, I just want to grab these young kids who have a glimmer of they want to be proactive, and I want to mold them the way before the job ruins them, supposedly. Which I think, I think there's good and bad to both of that. I think it could be good if you had the right leadership team, but I don't know how you're identifying who actually is competent, who has character, who has morals. I don't know how you're doing that without battle testing them actually and having them perform in the same way that everyone's required to prior to taking these people into your unit.
Amazing, Ant. Good morning. Shout out to you. I'm glad you're back. You've been MIA for a couple of days, but I'm glad you're back on post here. 1999 to the podcast. Thank you so much. It's a lot of coffee and donuts over here. Maybe a baker's dozen. Get some bagels. Happy Thanksgiving, Finest Unfiltered. Keep truth telling. Thank you so much. Amazing Ant. You're always so supportive of us. Great friend to the podcast. Thank you, Amazing Ant. We wish you nothing but good health and happiness, and happy Thanksgiving to you tomorrow. So I'll say this. You're absolutely spot on. So the difference between anti-crime and CRT and NST and public safety, all these teams, they're all quasi anti-crime teams. They're all trying to pretend to be anti-crime, but wearing a uniform to appease the public, right? Because Dermot Shea disbanded anti-crime, which is a phenomenal unit, right? And all these other units are a quasi anti-crime teams, but exactly that. They're not comprised of your heavy hitters. They're not your best cops in the precinct, right? It's always, even when I first got to the precinct, you always looked at the anti-crime guys like, wow, you wanted to be one of those guys. When they walked in the precinct, it was like they walked with capes. They were in plain clothes. They were all big burly guys. They were all masculine guys. They were all good cops. You wanted to be one of those guys, something that you strive to work to. But when it comes to the CRT teams, these guys have 2 and 3 years on the job, and they're running around doing anti-crime work without the experience to do anti-crime. And I think it's a recipe for disaster. We see the byproduct of it play out in the streets when it comes to these vehicle pursuits. And I think, unfortunately, what these kids don't realize, we've been such a force from outside to help. And we received opposition from a majority of the CRT team, not the entire CRT teams, but a majority because they're working under the chief. They have an agency attorney working for them. So they have all the resources, all the amenities to help them. So they don't realize what the big picture is. So they don't realize when this administration leaves and there's a turnover, these poor kids may be headed for a rude awakening. So I'll tell you one real fundamental difference also between anti-crime and the CRT team is there was an actual patrol guide procedure laying out what are the responsibilities of anti-crime police officer and what's the responsibilities of an anti-crime sergeant. And one of them was always to be immediately and supervised, right? So in order to be in plainclothes, you had to have direct supervision. You couldn't have a plainclothes team out there and your sergeant wasn't working. So that was one thing to be conducive to make sure that it's properly monitored. And the cops themselves had the experience, and along with the sergeant. There's no actual procedure in the patrol guide for the CRT team. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, I said it. I said I think they didn't need to do it because they just look at them as their anti-crime, and I think it shows that. I think it shows where they thought they didn't need to create a policy. I think it needs to be labeled out just for the men and women of the New York City Police Department and for their own members that are currently in the CRT team. So I think it's important. I think it should be also highlighted on who's picked on there, especially the supervisors. Because I think when you look early on, especially the 2 lieutenants who were so critical of this podcast and did some real questionable things that I don't think any police officer should ever do. Never mind be in charge of one of the most elite units in the NYPD. When you look at them, you really, I want to know how the supervisors are picked, because when I look at those 2 lieutenants in particular, those 2 lieutenants aren't people that should be leading young, impressionable minds. And I could go in depth about their careers. I won't do that, but I could go in depth about their careers and show how those lieutenants actually need to be supervised. How they perform out in the street. And again, I have no problem with someone that goes out there. I don't care how many civilian complaints you have, but it's what those complaints are. It's how you perform in the public. It's how your peers perceive you. It's how your supervisors perceive you. It's how your subordinates perceive you. And I don't believe those 2 people are really looked at very well by anybody, not by the community, not by their supervisors, not by their peers, not by their subordinates. And then it's like, well, who likes them? It's like, oh, Kaz and Shell. And it's like, oh, okay. So you targeted those people to lead young, impressionable minds to create more people with questionable integrity and who will do things and police in a way that I don't think 99% of the cops support. So I would want to know how supervisors are picked. I would have liked to seen them hone in on the careers of the supervisors, particularly like what internal affair complaints they had, what civilian complaints they had, what people they worked with in the past had to say about them. You didn't see any of that. You didn't see anything in this report. So I think we I think we should definitely get into this report because it's long. We have a hard out at 10. But anything before we get into it?
Sure. Just before you get into this, I want to say shout out to Rafael Martinez, $20 to the podcast. Coffee and donuts. Ron Layson says, I don't need coffee. I need tea. You're absolutely right. I'm trying to get over this cold. I got hit hard on this one. My whole family got sick. Good morning, John and Eric. Hand salute. Salute to you too, brother. For Eric's cold medicine, feel better, Devil Dog. Thank you, brother. Semplify. Remember what we were told in the Marines, just suck it up. I guess that's what I'm doing. I'm here on President Duty. Amazing Aunt says perfect attendance. So hopefully I get a perfect attendance with the podcast. Listen, I'll tell you one thing before we go into this. What this unit also lacked was transparency. Transparency for the public and transparency for the members of the police department. I remember working towards the end of my career. It was the last year. And there really wasn't there wasn't much information provided to the job about what the CRT team was, who was in it, what they were wearing. We didn't know anything about it. All of a sudden, I know I'm driving around one day and I see these kids in khaki pants, and we didn't know anything about them. We didn't know if they were assigned to a precinct, if they were assigned to citywide. It was kind of like a secret squirrel society. Secret squirrel society. Excuse me, my cold here. And wasn't much information provided to the job. Started out as a small team. We kind of had to find out by asking questions like, what are these kids doing? They work at the precinct, they work citywide. And I started to hear some real negative stuff about this team, right? Oh, they work directly for the chief. They make arrests. If it's an arrest they don't want, they just pull up to a precinct and drop off the arrest at the desk. No questions asked. That they're kind of belligerent because they work for the chief, and they just drop bodies off. And this was the first impression that I had of the CRT team. I heard it was some type of quasi anti-crime team, but not much information was provided. I thought it was it really did lack transparency. Jesse James, shout out to you. $9.99 to the podcast. Enjoy Thanksgiving, lieutenants. Enjoy your family. I retired yesterday. Shout out to you, brother. Outstanding. Jesse James retired yesterday. Eric, holy shit. I just looked up your 58. Nothing on John, though. Maybe I'll come on the show one day. Absolutely. That's why it works out great. We're kind of like a yin and yang. But John actually claims that he does have complaints and they're not showing up. But that is another thing. Speaking of 58, another reason why they're one of these young, impressionable rookies was because they did not have a 58 already established, which is a problem. It shows the job is not supportive of police officers getting civilian complaints, which is a byproduct of doing intrusive police work. So again, these young kids that are young and impressionable, don't really have understanding of politics, how the job works. Have them out there. They'll get their careers tainted. And once they're tainted, they'll either get rid of them or try to put them in a unit if they have enough connections with their nepotism. Let's get into the report, brother.
Yeah, so this comes out from Jocelyn Schrauber. Again, DOI, Department of Investigation, is appointed by New York City Mayor Eric Adams. They get confirmed through the city council. So I just want everyone to keep that in mind, right? You got to keep that in mind when they're doing a report on Eric Adams' baby, right? And then you got to sit here and tell yourself, wow, it looks like this report was a complete waste of taxpayer money. But you be the judge of that. You read this report. Links are in. We're going to get through it. So DOI's Office of the Inspector General for the NYPD issues report finding insufficient public information about the NYPD's community response team and absent of written policies and procedures to guide its actions. So the Department of Investigation, Office of the Inspector General for the New York City Police Department, OIG, NYPD, released a report today concerning the New York City Police Department's community response team. In July 2022, the NYPD created the Patrol Services Bureau's community response team, initially a single citywide specialized unit to respond to a rise in quality of life complaints from elected officials and community members. Since its creation, CRT has expanded significantly. 165 members of the service are currently assigned to CRT. In addition to the citywide team, a CRT team now exists in the members of service currently. Now exists in every patrol borough. OIG NYPD reviewed this specialized unit due to community concerns about the CRT and the absence of publicly available information about it. The review found the unit lacked a mission statement, as well as written policies and procedures in key areas, including selection of training of unit members, and focused And in its next phase will focus on the issues of disciplinary history of CRT officers and available data reflecting the impact of the CRT's work. This report provides transparency around the foundational aspects of the CRT and makes 7 recommendations. All right, so it just gives you this whole overview, and it talks about, all right, well, we conducted a review, and what we found was what Eric was saying, that it lacks transparency around who goes in there, around and around how they get in there, and around the training material. I personally think that is not a report. You don't need to really make recommendations. I would like to know how much money and time was spent on drafting this, because this to me is completely inept. It's completely inept. Like, you're going to sit here and should this be the focus of an actual report, Eric? Like, would you focus your energy and your team's efforts to say that, well, you don't have anything, or should just these be parts? Should just these be points in an overall report?
Absolutely. Not only does the CRT lack transparency, but this report in itself lacks transparency and show that they didn't go into any depth. Really, they didn't even scratch the surface when it comes to the CRT team. There's a lot of holes, and that's what I was saying. There's questions which should have been answered. What is the training? What is the criteria? What are the qualifications to be in this unit for a cop, for a supervisor? What are the tactics? Is there a manual? Nothing was laid out other than the fact that just information is missing. I think this report is completely inadequate and lacks transparency in itself. It just shows it wasn't thorough. It's a waste of taxpayer money. Absolutely.
So based on its review, the OIG NYPD made the following findings. Unlike other specialized units, CRT is not mentioned on the NYPD's website, despite being frequently featured on NYPD social media pages, as well as most recently on Dr. Phil. They've had their own TV series, remember that? And we actually heard something that they were working with cops at one point too. So let's see. I think something with Dr. Phil had came out last night, and that was based upon around that same scenario, that same time frame when we showed you the 911 call when John Shell was requesting an escort for him and Dr. Phil. But I'll review that later. We'll check that. If so, we'll bring that in. 2, there is no mission statement to inform and guide the work of CRT, despite NYPD leadership noting that the CRT's mission is to enforce quality of life issues and respond to community complaints. 3, there are no policies, procedures, or operations guides specifically applicable to CRT. 4, there are no policies and procedures specifically related to training for officers in CRT. 5, there have been no trainings created specifically for CRT officers, and CRT officers are not required to complete any specific trainings prior to beginning CRT-related work. 6, there are no written procedures for recruitment for officers or supervisors in CRT. 7, despite CRT leadership asserting that they personally track 311 calls, leadership does not have a mechanism or system to track community complaints, and thus to evaluate whether the number of complaints is decreasing in areas where CRT is active. CRT leadership also does not save or maintain the data that they personally track concerning community complaints. Based upon these findings, the OIG recommends the following. Memorialize a mission statement in writing that includes the aims and goals of the CRT, including its crime, offense specific, and publish it on the NYPD website. Update the NYPD's website to include CRT under the Patrol Services Bureau. Memorialize the patrol guide and or the administrative guide policies and procedures specific to CRT in the following areas. Uniform requirements, statistics concerning CRT that will be maintained by the department and the individuals responsible for recording and maintaining them. Recruitment guidelines, the requirements for CRT officers and supervisory roles, the training required to perform CRT duties, collect, analyze, publish 311 data specifically pertaining to quality of life categories that fall under the department's official quality of life definition and the CRT's mandate. Analysis should consider changes in 311 related data over time and be used to inform deployment, and enforcement decisions. Conduct a minimum of 2 inclusive and accessible meetings a year per patrol borough command to gather community sentiments with respect to the CRT and maintain a detailed agenda and minutes from each meeting. Track and maintain a database for all CRT deployment on a weekly basis. Publish the CRT specific data that the NYPD is already collecting for CRT. Arrests, summonses, mopeds, etc. on the website. So that's it. That's what this report is. Those were the issues it found. Those were the recommendations it made.
Well, I think ultimately the fact that this unit lacks transparency, first of all, the report is completely inadequate. But the stuff that they discussed here, what it says to me also is that the job, and I say the job, and I've said this time and time before, when I say the job, I mean the upper echelon of the police department. In my eyes, that's the job. That's who has control and ability to change policy, administer policy. So the job is the upper echelon. If anybody disagrees, tell me what you think. So when it comes to upper echelon of the police department, the commencement and the inception of this team without transparency, without a mission statement, really leaves these cops in a very precarious position, very vulnerable. And they don't realize it. Right now, they have a blanket protection with John Shell, Kaz Daughtry, while they have a super connection of nepotism, also with Jeffrey Madry to Eric Adams. But if it's a different administration, and if there's not a connection with nepotism with the DA's office, they really leave these kids on the hook. Because for one, if they do make an arrest, how are they going to paint a picture to the DA and say why they're in a particular location, what they're doing there, how they got there, why they're there? And they don't have any data to actually reflect on. And this is something I would teach my anti-crime guys, right? This is supposed to be a quasi-anti-crime team. Is that, yeah, they like to call us jump out boys, but we don't just jump out of a car just to grab anybody, right? And that's what people don't understand. They think, hey, you just grab people and throw them up against the wall. And that's actually complete farce. And if that's what people are doing out there, well, that's not real anti-crime work. We would actually know, right? What's the mission of anti-crime, right? Is to stop potential shootings, right? To retrieve illegal firearms, to stop robberies, to stop violent crime before it actually happens in a precinct. So there's no actual mission statement for the CRT team. So these guys don't have the ability to say, hey, here's the data that we have. We have numerous complaints, why we're in this specific area. Here's the data it's reflected on. Here's the complaints of the community. This is why we grabbed these three separate individuals. We do have a description laid out. We have a particular time, a particular location, and they don't have any data to reflect on. So that's a major problem, leaving these kids out to hang for potential civil rights violations. VSS Ventores, shout out to you, brother. $5 to the podcast. Coffee and donuts. Morning troops. This department is managed worse than the Chicago White Sox. Happy Thanksgiving. And CCRB can cartwheel through traffic. Absolutely. Shout out to you, brother. You're 100% spot on. John, what do you think about the fact that they're going out there, and we hear Kaz Daughtry say it constantly, that they're addressing community complaints, but they don't actually have the data to reflect on it? Do you agree with me that it puts these kids in a precarious and a vulnerable position?
I mean, if you can't explain to DOI why you're out there doing something, then how are you explaining it in a court of law? I agree with you 100%. How are you explaining it as when related to being in a civilian complaint review board meeting or an internal affairs bureau meeting, which I believe, by the way, that they are shielded from, both of them. I believe that their complaints go a totally different route, and I have nothing to prove that. That's just my own personal opinion on what's going, because based upon videos I've seen and the outcomes from those videos where we would have seen people be indicted, suspended, possibly fired, we haven't seen anything like that. We've seen people continue on their career like absolutely nothing happened. So I believe there's a totally different it's a totally different police department, in my opinion, and that's why there's nothing there for them. And what we're seeing is, you're not what community complaints specifically are you even going after? Community of complaints? That's a broad statement, Eric. Community complaints, really? So, like, what type of complaints are there? There's a million. Are you responding to parking scenarios? Are you responding to a commercial establishment complaints? What specific community complaints? It's a very broad topic. And then how are you deploying your teams? Why are you deploying your teams? What complaints specifically are you reading? So, I mean, me and you both did it. We'd go in every day. I would read all of the 61s. 61s are the crime complaints. I would read all the crime. I wouldn't read the 311s, not going to lie, because there's only so much you could read. I would go in early every day. I'd read all the 61s from my precinct and the surrounding precincts that touched my precinct, right? It's a very time-consuming endeavor to do. There is no way for a borough you're reading every major 61 there is for the entire borough before going out, unless you have someone doing there while you're playing Call of Duty for 4 hours and they're reading out all the complaints. Hey, look at this, look at this. So if you have an intel guy to like sift through all of it, but that's going to be basically their job. They're going to be there 4 or 5 hours. I think you're going to go through every complaint that borough's affecting, and then all right, we're 4 hours into tour. You know where we should go? Let's go to Roll and Roast up, where we're going to go eat. And we'll focus around there because there was a robbery over there the other day. It's not efficient at all. What they're labeling out right here just shows that there's no way they're doing what they want. They're doing what they want, or they're doing whatever's popping up in the news and they're told to go. So if it's not a hot issue, they're getting down days. That's all that tells me, is they're not properly being utilized.
Right, and that comes down to good leadership and good supervision. That's why it's so important. What is the criteria? What are the qualifications to be in this unit? And I agree with you, John. I think that this unit has a blanket of protection and amenities that other units, such as the public safety teams, neighborhood safety teams, or anyone out there doing intrusive police work, is not afforded, that has the same opportunity to be shielded from the Civilian Complaint Review Board, from City Council, from the DA's office, in the manner that the CRT team has, which is why I always refer to the job as having a 3-tiered system. And those 3 tiers are the upper echelon, anyone connected by nepotism, your general population, which is everyone else in blue pants, and your CRT team. And there's definitely a blanket protection. I sift through a lot of CCRBs when it comes to CRT team, especially when we were attacked by the CRT team on social media. I was able to go through the CCRB database, and you and I put together who was working with who. We have all the information, all the names, and we saw their records, and they're completely shielded because in most cases, when they do receive charges, particular substantiations from CCRB, I've seen when they went to trial, they're found not guilty, which I found cases that were not guilty. Most people do not when they go to the courtroom, and a lot of CCRBs you see are not even reflective on their record. So there's definitely a blanket protection there. Ron Layson, shout out to you. I just want to say thank you so much for that compliment. I really appreciate it. He puts, that's the main problem, 58. People will never know the professionalism of your unit, Eric. I witnessed it firsthand. Your operational process should have been a model. Instead, you were targeted. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. That's exactly that. That was always my, my qualifications for the members of my anti-crime team is, do they have the ability to understand, to understand a research process? We would always research a crime, do a crime analysis of what's going on in the precinct, what's going on in the surrounding precincts, what's going on in other boroughs that may have a connection. What are crime clusters? What are patterns? So my guys were very knowledgeable. I mean, they knew all the gang members. We had the list of all the gang members in the precinct. They knew who the gang members were. They knew who the mothers were, the fathers were. They knew what they were arrested for, what they were convicted for. They had a great relationship. They knew them. The gang members knew my guys. They actually had a good relationship, way better before cameras than after cameras. That's another story for another day, but great relationship. They were very knowledgeable. They didn't just go out there, arbitrarily and just stop people. They actually knew there was a mission. It was completely focused.
Yeah, and I think that's the problem. Like, it's a good point when you're bringing up, like, cops, anti-crime cops, they get to know their commands. They get to know the players. They get to know the people that travel through. They know the players in the outside commands. But now you're taking young kids who don't know any of that, never had to identify and learn that, understand how to read 61s, how to read patterns, how to actually go out there and find them active, be involved in their active while those criminal patterns are happening with those players. And you're expecting them to, over a large area, whether it be the entire city or an entire borough, understand how to do that same type of work over the entire borough when they've never had to do it in one precinct. So I think that's a major, major problem. Ron Layson says, synopsis of the report. They just put together a unit, did whatever they wanted, and even Shell and Kaz say how highly trained they are. Yet there is no detailed training or tracking of the training. 100%. That's exactly what it is. All right, let's go a little further into this report. So early in 2023, the media reported that NYPD vehicle pursuits increased by 600% compared to the same period the previous year. These pursuits were attributed in part to the CRT in light of the unit's focus on apprehending illegal vehicles. Chief Shell acknowledged the spike in vehicle pursuits in July 2023 at a press conference, stating that with the enforcement of more moving summonses and car stops and people thinking that they could take off on us, those days are over. OIG began its review of CRT in part due to the lack of publicly available information related to the unit's work, despite its high-profile nature. For instance, while the NYPD features select CRT actions on its social media pages, it fails to mention the unit on its public website. So before I even go on this at all, because all this does now is break down those categories that it identified. Why did it bring up the car pursuits, right? I guess it has to bring up the car pursuits, but they never even get into it. How many car pursuits have the CRT had? How many of those have ended in public property damage? How many of those have ended in injury? How many of those have put damage to department vehicles? How many people have died as a result of that, whether it be a perp or an innocent life? I mean, this is what people want to know. They don't care that, unlike other special units, CRT is not mentioned on the NYPD website. Okay, I don't think we really need a huge analysis on that. What do you think about it bringing up the car pursuits? Why did it bring up the car pursuits and then just gloss right over it?
Absolutely. It's obvious that the Inspector General is protecting John Shell because it mentions the vehicle pursuits but doesn't go in depth. That's why we both agreed that this report is completely inadequate and it doesn't even scratch the surface. They mentioned the vehicle reports, but there should have been analysis of what is the outcome of these vehicle reports, and you just laid it out perfectly. Are there any fatalities, injuries, property damage? What is the result of these vehicle pursuits? So ultimately, to determine was it effective, right? Because obviously the vehicle pursuits are up. It's a byproduct of this unit. It's also a direct mission by John Shell. He put it out there on the news for the public. What is the outcome? Was it a benefit for public safety? Was it a drawback? Was it an effective tactic? But they didn't even delve into it. So again, this lacks when I say the unit lacks transparency, so does this report. It does not delve into the actual issues. The fact that they just mentioned it, totally glazed over it, is a huge problem. And it shows, obviously, it's protecting John Shell. So John Shell, Jeffrey Madry, Kaz Daughtry, along with the CRT team unit. Again, as we always say, they have a blanket protection that others don't have. It's complete nepotism. And it shows the Inspector General cannot be trusted also.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I agree with you 100%. I just want to, and another thing I just want to go on, because we were talking about the complaints, and despite CRT leadership asserting that they personally track 311 calls, leadership does not have a mechanism or system to track community complaints, and thus to evaluate whether the number of complaints is decreasing in an area where CRT is active. CRT leadership also does not save or maintain the data they personally track concerning community complaints. So I got two questions for you. One, is this something that the CRT should even bother to be doing, or any unit that's out there on the ground involved in policing, involved in proactive policing? And two, did you ever do this? Do you agree with this? I don't even really know what they're getting at here. This sounds like busy work. This sounds like the OIG is attempting to just create busy work for the CRT. I don't know what this is. I don't know what the benefit of this would be. And just because community complaints are decreasing doesn't mean that, whether they're decreasing or increasing, it doesn't mean that the CRT is not doing their job or doing their job. I don't know what it's saying to do here. This sounds like just administrative work. And again, I like, it just falls on its face with this whole report. Have you ever tracked what 61s you were going out? No, I never did. Did you?
No, absolutely not. So when it comes to that, I actually have to side with the CRT team. No, we didn't track the 61s. We worked the 61s as they came in, right? It was just, it's too much volume to excuse me. It's too much volume to actually track, right? You track the 61s as they come in. So no, we didn't track that, but we did have, you do know the crimes that are out there, right? You have your CompStat sheets. So you do have data to reflect on. The fact that they don't have the data, I mean, they're saying that they utilize the 301 systems. The 301 is assigned to a precinct. So they do have data. If they're saying that they go after quality of life and actually community complaints, the data should, excuse me, I'm dying over here. The data should come from 301s, and the data should also come from these actual community complaints. Are they going to community meetings? Are these complaints that are actually being emailed to the NCOs, right, the neighborhood coordination officers, because that was a route where the complaints would go? How are they receiving these complaints other than just saying, hey, we're getting community complaints, because it's easy to say, but where is the actual data to reflect on? I think that data is extremely important so that the cops actually have something to show that there's a mission and a focus why they're in a particular area. So they're not accused of racial profiling and biased policing from the Civilian Complaint Review Board. But if they're not being charged with those allegations from CCRB without any data, then it just shows clearly they have a blanket protection from Kenneth Daughtry and John Schell and Jeffrey Mandry, which we know of. Mary Dowd, shout out to you. Not related to Michael. This is someone of integrity here. Good friend to the podcast. Thank you so much. 1999. Just getting to bed from my midnight shift. Nurse life. Thank you so much for what you do, by the way. Watching you on my TV now. Who knew? Happy Thanksgiving, John and Eric. Thank you so much. Happy Thanksgiving to you, Mary. Thank you so much for what you do, working as a nurse. I don't know if you're an RN. I assume you are. God bless. That is one of the hardest jobs. And I will say nurses are the most caring people. I saw it with my father. Was in a nursing home, unfortunately, lost his life to COVID. But nurses are fantastic. Thank you for everything that you do. You guys truly are amazing people. So what I'm curious also, we're talking about transparency with this. So I'm hearing a rumor that cops are not allowed to watch body camera footage from someone that's outside their precinct. So that to me that also lacks transparency also. So if I'm working public safety or neighborhood safety teams, and let's say I'm working the 7-9 precinct, right? Because that just came up with the XO with the CO. Let's say I'm working the 7-9 precinct, and I want to watch body cam footage from the CRT team that was there that night because they think that they might have stopped someone who was the subject or target of my investigation. But I can't watch it because they're from an outside command. Are you hearing that also? I think that's also to protect these guys if that's true.
I mean, it's very possible. I mean, it's very possible that that's exactly what that is. I listen, if you're watching body camera to watch body camera, I think that's wrong. I think that you should be penalized. I don't think that you should have the ability to do that. But if you're watching body camera based upon something that you're involved in or investigation you're concerned in, you're a police officer. Anything in that is interfering in an investigation. And if that's a procedure, it's done on purpose to interfere in your investigation. It depends the context of it for me, where I would agree or disagree. So, and Tom says $1.99. Eric, the Marines have a name for all that coughing. Yeah, no, it depends the context for me. It totally depends the context for me. So I get you're the police department. You got to be transparent. I get it. I believe in transparency. I do 100%. Memorializing a mission statement. Okay, whatever. Fine. Should the CRT be listed on the website? Yes. Okay, they're listed on the website. These are not hard things. Creating a patrol guide procedure, administrative guide policy, it's going to take a little time. I don't know that they weren't working on it or were. I don't see that being a bad thing. But then the report goes further. Collect, analyze, and publish 311 data specifically pertaining to quality of life categories that fall under the department's official quality of life definition and CRT's mandate. Analysis should consider changes in 311 related data over time and be used to inform deployment and informative decisions. So they want them to analyze, collect, and publish the 311 data. The data is already available. It's called 311. Go in there. You could do a search and you could check out the related data. They're actually asking them to do like statistical analysis based work based upon their deployments. Again, I think this is busy work. I don't think this has anything to do with what the CRT should do. I think that they do analyze it. I don't think they collect it. Collecting it's a huge waste of time. I think publishing it's a huge waste of time. It's already published. I think that the unit should obviously be looking at the data, and I'm not going to sit here and say that they're not, but I don't think they need to publish it or collect it. I think that's absolutely ridiculous. And then it goes on to say that it needs to conduct a minimum of 2 inclusive and accessible meetings a year per patrol borough command. I mean, whatever. That actually seems kind of low to me. Seems kind of low to me. I mean, you should have to do maybe 2 meetings a year per each precinct that you work in. Never mind. We're talking about 2 meetings a year in the whole patrol borough command. I don't know. I mean, what do you think about those 2 things? Collect, analyze, publish 311 data, and then 2 inclusive meetings and accessible meetings per patrol borough command a year.
I think this report is total nonsense. I think it's just complete hogwash. I think it's all fluff, honestly. A minimum of 2 meetings per year. I mean, you should be meeting constantly. You're in a different uniform. Everyone, you're identifiable by the police department. You're out there addressing the quality of life complaints. You're involved in all these vehicle pursuits that have left people in fatalities, that have caused property damage, that have been the focus of what's going on in the city. You're in the public eye. To have 2 meetings a year is a joke. It's absolutely ridiculous. And I agree with you. Do you have to have actual statistical analysis? Are you going to have a crime analysis like you would have in a precinct to analyze every 301 complaint? No. You should just have actual sheets. Like, okay, listen, we had 301 complaints in the 7-9 precinct. We had a list of 301 complaints. There were bike complaints that were in this specific area. We pulled the 301s for that particular day or that month, and that's why we dress in that particular location. It doesn't have to go that in depth. It has to be some data, but doesn't have to go in depth. I think this report is just complete fluff. Honestly. Where is the information on the vehicle pursuits? This stuff is fluff. That's where they should have delved into, and they didn't. John, I think you hit your mic.
Sorry about that. I unplugged my.
Got your back, brother. All good.
Yeah. Unplugged my mic by accident. So yeah, this whole report was done to distract, in my opinion. So whoever wrote it, I mean, that's my opinion. Change my mind. Come on here and tell me why this is important. I don't see it. I want my money back. I 100% want my money back on this report. So here's another one. Listen to this one. This one's funny.
I just want to say before you go into it, Ron Layson, spot on. The SOL, which is the Special Operations Lieutenant for outside agencies, always attended the community council meetings. The community response team lieutenant should do the same. Absolutely spot on. That's the information. Those are meetings. That's data. You're spot on. I agree.
Yeah, but also they should have to go there too to see what people are dealing with, what the bosses have to deal with. They should be at those meetings as well. I'm not saying all of them, but there should be a rotation where the cops are in those meetings as well to sit there and hear. They don't necessarily need to speak, but they need to hear what's going on and what's being said, so they could understand and create and grow and mature in their work. So, well, what'd you say before you rudely cut me off? Oh, okay. All right. So here we go. All right. So here's another one. Listen to this. Track and maintain a database for all CRT deployment on a weekly basis. So when we talk about transparency, track and maintain a database for all CRT deployments on a weekly basis. We want to talk about transparency. This is pertinent documentation that needs to be done. Not on a weekly basis. Every single night where the CRT is deployed should be tracked and maintained for everyone's knowledge. That's pertinent information. Not on a weekly basis. It's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. The information is going to be inaccurate. Whoever wrote this report it's literally being done to shield this unit, the same way that John Shell and Kaz Daughtry have been shielding this unit.
I think you're spot on. You're spot on. You know, think about it. You're a commanding officer of the precinct, right? Let's say you're the 123 precinct where you worked. Let's say you're the 123 commanding. You're at Comstat, and you're having an issue with robberies or burglaries. And say, hey, the community response team was deployed to the command. Okay, how many days of the month? What days were they there? What times were they there? Why were they there? Oh, we had burglaries from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. Whatever, 1,600 to 1,800 hours. The CRT team was deployed to the 123 precinct. Here's how they were utilized. I worked in conjunction with the commanding officer CRT. Absolutely, it should be on a daily basis. It always was with anti-crime, public safety, neighborhood safety teams. It's tracked daily of where you're responding to, how you're deployed. The same thing should be utilized for the CRT team. I hope there should be communication between the commanding officers and the CRT team for those purposes at ComStat. How will they be utilized? And if that burglary or robbery problem is then closed out or subsided, then the CRT team could then be utilized for a different location. You know, if they're still there and that burglary problem has already been taken care of, why are they being utilized? So there has to be tracked daily. You're absolutely right.
So, and the other thing, publish the CRT specific data that NYPD is already collecting for CRT, i.e., arrests, summonses, mopeds. I don't know what mopeds is, etc. on the website. I personally, again, I don't think that that's an overall NYPD issue that they could deal with. It has nothing to do with the CRT team. The information should be available for things like this report. For when you go testify in front of city council. I don't know that the public needs to know how many arrests the CRT team makes and how many summonses they made. Listen, it's transparent. You want to do it, fine. That falls on the leadership of the NYPD. It has nothing to do with the unit specifically. The NYPD has the tracking and statistical analysis ability and the computer programs to break all of this down for every specific unit. So there's no need that they already have the information. They have the information. Whether it should be published or not, it really doesn't matter to me at all. But right now, what I see is this report's inept, and it basically proves what everyone in the NYPD has been saying, that CRT is operating and running around like a rogue, unaccountable unit that's a separate police department that falls under the behest of John Shell and Kaz Daughtry. And no one really knows except for what's going on with them, except for the people that are in that unit.
Tom, $1.99 to the podcast. More coffee, more donuts. He says, John, audio problems too? Eric is rubbing off on you. I don't know if you noticed, but lately the Starlink has been pretty good. So I bought this whole new contraption to hook up to my ladder. The Starlink's way up in the air. I got it out of the way of the trees. It's been a lot better. So I think the weak link right now is you. But listen, I agree with you. Does transparency mean that they have to have received every piece of data? No. But the problem is exactly this. Because John Shell, Jeffrey Madry, Kaz Daughtry are not transparent with this unit, this job always goes so far left, and then we have opposition go so far right. Now they want every specific piece of data because they're not transparent. They should be transparent. You don't have to give every single arrest what the arrest was, but there should be an overall synopsis of some data to show how the CRT team was utilized. Exactly what I said. If you're in the 123 precinct and you have a burglary problem or a robbery problem, and the CRT team was there deployed, well, how impactful was that unit? How were they utilized? How did they help in stopping those burglaries in that command if they did so? So that's why the data would be important. Does it have to be so much minutia to every specific arrest or summons? No, but because they're not being transparent, so much information will be requested. You know, the problem with this report also, I think it's like 20-something pages. This whole thing could have been done in four or five pages. It's just a bunch of hogwash. And most of it is just nonsense. It's fluff.
No, I think this report should have been 2,000 pages. You know, if you're going to waste the time, how much money did we spend on it? That's what I'd like to know. How much of taxpayer money did we spend on this report? Like, that's, I think this report should have been 2,000 pages. If you're going to go so in depth upon what you think should be tracked, we should hone in on the information that the public wants to know. If that's, if you're going to do an analysis of the unit, do an actual analysis of the unit.
No, you're right. That's what I totally agree with. That's what I'm saying. This is about 20 something pages, but this actual report itself that was conducted by OIG could have been 4 pages because most of it is actual fluff. But you're right. It should be an extensive report because they should delve into the actual detail, the minutia, especially the vehicle pursuit itself. That probably could have been a 20-page report on its own. Driver's seat, shout out to you. $10 to the podcast. Happy Thanksgiving, guys. Happy Thanksgiving to you. Thank you so much for being a friend and listening to the podcast. We appreciate it. We hope you enjoy tomorrow.
Yeah, and driver's seat, we missed your last one. Sorry, but like two episodes ago, you donated to the podcast like right at the end. We caught it after we were already off, so appreciate it. We don't know if you were on the other day, but we gave you a shout out when we came back on the next day, so appreciate it. So this part, is personnel and training, leadership, right? Currently, Chief Shell and Deputy Commissioner Daughtry remain involved in the daily operations of the unit, determining the unit's focus and participating in the recruitment process. Let's talk about the recruitment process, right? So again, it labels out. So some things it does do, this report, is, although I believe it's inept, it proves everything we've been saying. It proves everything we've been saying about Eric Adams' administration. It proves about the gaslighting and the misdirection that is constantly happening in New York City and in the NYPD. And I don't even believe they know they're doing it. They're just doing it by talking, like by going through, by even giving the data or the lack of data. It says a lot of things. So listen to this part. This part's very recruitment process. The unit has approximately 165 uniformed members of the service assigned to it, and is comprised of police officers, sergeants, lieutenants, and captains. CRT is divided into 9 commands: citywide, Manhattan North, Manhattan South, Brooklyn North, Brooklyn South, Queens North, Queens South, the Bronx, and Staten Island. And each patrol borough command is led by a commanding officer of specialized units. The commanding officer of the citywide team is Captain Thomas Kaminsky. Based on the rosters provided by the NYPD, the number of CRT members has varied over time. The 2022 roster had 7 people, with a note that CRT was at its infancy during 2022. Numbers are approximate, as members of service assigned were not permanently assigned. In spring of 2023, CRT members expanded to all boroughs, with a roster increase to 171 members, and a later decline in 2024 to 165 members, based upon a May 2024 roster. Thus, it is difficult to pinpoint the exact numbers of officers in the unit at a given time, especially because many officers are temporarily transferred in the unit for the first 90 days of their tenure within the command, and it is unclear whether officers appear on the roster during these temporary transfer periods. I remember at one time, you couldn't even get a roster. Like, there was no roster. So, to me, it seems like they're just real, like, again, it's Shell and Daughtry are running this unit, and the mismanagement is exactly the mismanagement that we've been seeing. There's not even, they can't even tell you how many people are in their unit up to date. I mean, that is the simplest thing. How many guys are assigned to you? They can't even give you that information. Oh, well, it's hard because of temporary transfers. How many guys are assigned to you? Can't answer the question.
That's a huge problem for accountability. First of all, it's a paramilitary organization. What do you always learn in the military? Accountability, accountability, accountability. Know who your people are, where your people are, and what your people are doing at all times. And they don't know how many people are assigned to the unit. You should know. I have 165 permanent members. I have 6 that are here temporarily assigned. You should have those numbers at the top of your head, especially if you're in a leadership position. Absolutely. The fact that they don't know, that's a problem. So if you have a unit out there that's involved in a gun battle, it's involved in shooting, it potentially could be someone that you didn't even know was assigned to the unit. That's a problem. That's a failure on the leadership of John Shell, Kaz Daughtry, and Jeffrey Madry. Absolutely. And that's why there is a portion of this, and we both agreed that the report is great. The fact that it's so inadequate, it's actually a telltale of the signs of what's going on with the leadership. I think they're trying to protect John Shell, but they don't realize they're actually giving some telltale signs of the failures of the leadership with this particular unit. Do I blame the cops that they don't have a roster of knowing where and who's assigned? Absolutely not. This completely falls on leadership. Upstate Detective, shout out to you, $9.99. We appreciate more coffee and donuts. He puts, good morning, brothers. Happy Thanksgiving. Good morning to you. We appreciate it. Happy Thanksgiving, everyone. It's nice to see this year. We see a lot of people traveling this coming Thanksgiving more than the past couple of years. Looks like we're coming back. Donald Trump was elected. It really, you can feel it. It's only been a couple of weeks since the election, but you start to feel it. People are coming back. So we hope everybody has an awesome Thanksgiving.
So, and then for you young officers, you want to know how to get on CRT, or you're a young supervisor, or you're an active supervisor, and you're like, you know what? That looks fun. That looks cool. I want to get into that Call of Duty group, and I want to play in that private Call of Duty chat. So how do I do that? There had not been an official recruitment process for CRT. According to members, some officers applied, were interviewed, and were temporarily transferred into the unit to see if they were a good fit. Other officers worked with the CRT before joining, which enabled them to join the unit without an interview. However, while the process was less formal at its inception, it currently proceeds with potential new officers undergoing an interview, joining a member of the CRT for 3 tours, and having their department record reviewed before temporarily being assigned to the unit for 90 days. After the conclusion of the 90 days, CRT leaderships decide whether the member of service will be permanently assigned or whether they will return to their prior command. While this may presently be the case for recruitment of new members, there are no written policies or procedures outlining this process.
What I love is that, again, I said the OIG doesn't understand the civil lines of the police department, so we know clearly they laid out the fact that the CRT team is a different tier, and this is completely the metric system is complete nepotism. There's absolutely no process of how they actually get into the unit. Is there actual formal interview process? It's pretty much Kaz Daughtry, Jeffrey Madry, and John Shell. They're people. They put them in. That's pretty much. So you happen to work with a member, and they just put you in. Again, this is completely telltale sign of what actually happens. It shows the nepotism. John and I were both talking about this offline. Like, wow, look at this spot right here. They don't even realize the information that they just provided. That's a complete sign of complete nepotism, and the nepotism equates to corruption. If you don't see it, it's right there. You got to read this article is public information. Read that again. It's outstanding.
Yeah, and then the application process to join CRT is not standardized. In the sense, there are no uniform requirements that must be met before an officer can join the unit. So you could have no arrests, you could have 2 arrests, you could have 100 arrests. Doesn't matter. You could have 1 million complaints, you could have 0 complaints. There is no requirements met to come here. I know what the requirement is. It's, do you fit in the circle of nepotism or don't you? And that's it. So, nor is there an existing process memorialized or uniformly applied. Several senior NYPD officials, as well as members of the CRT, noted that an officer's complaint history, i.e. CCRB and internal affair complaints, sick record, and prior assignments are reviewed by CRT supervisors before they are offered a temporary assignment or permanent transfer into the unit. But officials did not identify any threshold requirements with respect to officer history or unit entry. However, furthermore, review of officer history prior to entry into CRT is not memorialized in writing. Additionally, according to officials, there is no performance assessment system unique to CRT. CRT officers are evaluated using the same schedule and categories that are used to evaluate all officers in their rank across the department. I mean, I don't think that they need a different assessment. I mean, they should be reviewed and analyzed the same way every cop is. But I think when you're talking about how do you get in the unit, should kind of be some type of standards, and it should be memorialized, and there should be an application process.
Brother, there's no doubt about it, right? This is supposed to be a high-speed unit. They're wearing a different uniform. You're out there running around. You have a lot of responsibility and power in this unit because you're not only assigned to one precinct, you're assigned to different precincts within a borough. So you have to be pretty knowledgeable. Not only you're not working in just your precinct, a place of comfort, a place that you have knowledge. You're working in precincts that span for an entire borough. And some of these boroughs are huge, right? Especially if you're working in Brooklyn North. Brooklyn North is a huge borough. I mean, Brooklyn is so big itself that it had to be split into two boroughs. But even Brooklyn North on its own, it's a huge borough. And you have to be responsible and have a lot of knowledge. This is a high-speed unit, which is supposed to be. There should be absolute metric system of what's the standard to get into this unit. What are the qualifications? You know, I'm curious also because the way this is laid out, we know the program, it's called POST, right? For our active retired members, anyone from an outside agency. If you're interested in to see what vacancies are available and interested in applying for something on the job, you go into what's called POST on the intranet for the NYPD to see what's available. So I'm curious, and according to this, the answer would be no. Is the CRT team available on POST? If I'm just John McCarry, Eric Dim, and I'm a cop and I'm making arrests and I'm interested in doing intrusive police work, I want to wear khaki pants, can I go on POST and see if the unit is available or not? And I would say based on this, the answer is no. That there's nothing there. There's no actual application process.
Yeah. And then when it gets to the training, and I love it because it is so true that they talk about how highly trained they are, the best training. They're so trained. They know how to perform vehicle pursuits. They're highly trained in vehicle pursuits. It's trained so good. You know, they know what they're doing. They know how to work within the guidelines of the patrol guide. Now, I'm going to say it again. When it relates to vehicle pursuits, 99% of those vehicle pursuits violate the patrol guide. They just violate the department's own procedure. You know, and they know that. And that's why when John Schell said we're not having it no more, Jeffrey Madry, a few hours later, put out a statement reminding everyone of the patrol guide so that when the shit hits the fan, they say, oh, I didn't tell them to do that. They have to follow this rule. We told them, follow the rules. So training. There are no official mandatory trainings that must be completed before an officer joins the CRT. There are no mandatory training during an officer's tenure with the CRT. Many members of the CRT stated they took neighborhood safety team training either before they began their role in CRT or shortly thereafter. Some understood MST training to be a requirement for CRT officers. Others did not. CRT officers also have discretion to assign CRT officers to particular trainings. After notification to Patrol Borough Training Sergeant, which often includes training such as radio motor patrol driving/vehicle training, disorder control training, pickpocket training, and surveillance training. Despite this, these trainings are neither required nor specific to CRT. Trainings taken by CRT officers are tracked by the leadership in the patrol borough they work in, rather than by the CRT supervisor. CRT supervisors are charged with staying up to date with upcoming trainings and requesting that officers they supervise take these trainings. Beyond those routine trainings required for all members of the department, NYPD provided just one CRT team's training records, the CRT citywide, maintained by Captain Kaminsky to OIG NYPD, and the trainings taken appear to vary from officer to officer. The office was unable to identify trainings that are common to all CRT officers or that appear to be designated specifically for those officers. Specialized training is typically provided to specialized units in order to ensure that each member has why can't I say this word? The necessary skills to achieve the unit's unique mission and are typically mandatory for all officers within a specialized unit. Therefore, it is best to practice to establish written policies and outline training requirements of the specific unit. The COPS/MPI guide notes that specialized units can pose risks of liability for their departments if they lack proper training to achieve their mission, and therefore recommends targeted training for that unit officers despite the commitment of resources required. So there you go. They're involved in all of these vehicle pursuits and all these crashes, and there is zero training regarding vehicle pursuits. 0. So guess what, John Shell? I lied. Again.
I lied. You know what's funny? I'm actually starting to like this report because the report lacks transparency itself. It doesn't even scratch the surface. But what it does show, it shows the epic fail by the leadership of the NYPD, particularly when we talk about John Shell, Kaz Daughtry, Jeffrey Madry. It shows the conflicts. It shows the contradictions of what they put out to the public, how they gaslight the public from what's actually documented. What do we learn in the police department? If it's not on paper, it didn't happen. So Kaz Daughtry and John Shell want to tell the public how highly trained the CRT team is and how great they're doing with these vehicle pursuits. Well, okay, back it up with the data. Show us what training has been conducted. First of all, they don't even have a roster. They can't even tell you who's in their unit. How are they going to tell you how highly trained they are? If it was off the top of your head, John, if you and I were working together and someone said, hey, I need someone to drive a bus, right? We got to commandeer a bus because we have to transport. Maybe we had a mass arrest situation. We would know in our unit who in that unit has an endorsement to drive a bus. We would know that, right? Because we know our people. We know what they're trained. They don't know. They don't even know who's in their unit. So how they don't even know what type of training they're receiving. How could they say they're highly trained if they don't even have a document? They don't even know what training they received. So this document, it's a lot of fluff, but in some ways I like it because it just shows how inadequate and inept the police department is and the epic fail we see on the leadership.
Yeah. So tracking and accountability to manage the unit and ensure accountability, CRT leadership tracks a number of categories using activity reports. Statistics for each CRT team are compiled to the patrol bureau level, typically by an admin officer or by CRT sergeants and lieutenants, and included in weekly activity reports. These activity reports are reviewed by the patrol bureau's specialized unit commanding officer, who oversees CRT, and later shared with Deputy Commissioner Daughtry and Chief Shell. So here it is. It tracks felony, misdemeanor, and violation arrest. It tracks gun arrests, gun recovered, A summonses, B summonses, C summonses, alt summonses, stop reports, vehicle stop reports, returns on warrant, I-card apprehension, pursuit forms, vehicle seized, ATV, bikes, mopeds, paper plate summons, vendor operations, vendor interactions, parties responded to. So that's it. It's basically a report on activity. Now, it's an enforcement unit. I get it. So you're going to want activity. But the tracking of all this is it's just a very low resolution look at this. This looks like, I don't know, are they pushing numbers on these guys? I guarantee they are, right? This looks like, how well, what'd you do? Oh, you didn't have any gun recovered? You didn't have any gun arrests this month? Oh, you didn't have this? So it looks like it looks exactly like what Eric Adams said didn't work, because it's not tracking anything else other than their activity. Now, it's great if you have 1 million arrests on there. If you say if your arrest for the month, you have 7 arrests there. It doesn't tell you anything about the arrest, right? You don't know if they're the right people. It's great if you have 1 million C summonses, right? How do you know you're targeting the right people? So it's not what do they call it? Precision policing. This isn't precision policing. This is that looks like a really dumb anti-crime sergeant who probably shouldn't have been an anti-crime sergeant put this together, and this is basically the amount of tracking that this unit has. Is how much activity do you have? That's it. That's all they got. What do you got for me?
Shout out to Tom. Tom says, come on, Eric, read my $1.99 super chat about the Marines. I know John read it, but I'm going to read it, Tom. He said, Eric, the Marines have a name for all that coughing. I know exactly what you're talking about, brother. Thank you so much. So when you get a chance, you can send $1.99 and I'll read more stuff for you. Yeah, but you know what, John? I think this is a complete epic fail. It's very important when we have a unit. You know, when I was supervising units, I want to know what training my cops have. You know, there should be a metric system, something standard, right? Sort of package, right? That when you go into a unit, what your background is, right? Maybe you have so many arrests. You have court testimony training. Maybe you have some type of additional training on driving because you're going to be involved in vehicle pursuits, right? This unit is responsible for the uptick in vehicle pursuits and pushed by John Shell. There should be some mandatory requirements. Once you're in that unit, I'm sure people are going to start to get additional training. but there should be an actual standard of what specific training you have to go into this unit, especially a high-speed unit. There's also no indication of why are they wearing a different uniform. It doesn't even lay that out, other than because it's John Shell's baby. To me, obvious that they want that John Shell and Kaz Daughtry and Jeffrey Madry want the CRT team to stick out so that no one messes with their people, which is why some of these CRT people advocate for their upper echelon, because it's very beneficial to them. But this should be very specific, detailed metric system of what training you have to get to that unit. The fact that they don't have that laid out, that's an epic fail.
Yeah. So, I mean, the whole thing, I think the report's a bunch of fluff. I agree with you. I think I was like reading it. I was like, all right, we could see this and then possibly defend this unit. But after reading this, I can't defend this unit. I can't even, like, anything they do, I'm going to say, wow, we don't even have what the uniform requirements are. You don't even know what they're required to wear. So there are no requirements. You can dress however you want. And that's exactly how we see. Each one of them has their own unique little spin on that uniform. They wear their own thing. So you could see that, right? Oh, one guy wears a T-shirt under, the other guy wears a hoodie under. There are no uniform requirements. There is nothing. This unit was basically thrown together. It's go out there and get me numbers, and these are the numbers, and this is what I want to see, and that's it. And don't worry, we'll take care of you, kid, when it comes down to CCRB and when it comes down to more than likely you should be indicted by DA Alvin Bragg. Don't worry, we'll just modify you instead of suspending you, and you'll be back out on the street in a few months earning a ginormous amount of overtime. So I think that, that report fails, in my opinion. I don't see where they identified really any issues. I don't think it alleviated any form of transparency. I think it did highlight two things. It highlighted that there are no procedures in place. It highlighted whoever put this together is incompetent and inept. It highlighted the fact there is no training. So when John Shell and Kaz Daughtry continuously say they're so highly trained, they're lying to you. There is no training. And it highlighted the fact that there is no oversight in New York City, not in the NYPD, and not in the outside agency at DOI. No one is reviewing these vehicle pursuits. Neither is Letitia James. So this comes out from the city in regards to this report by Yoav Goen. NYPD Inspector General scrutinizes Secret Adams Quality of Life Unit. Is that title fair? Are they secret?
I mean, I guess they are secret because it lacks transparency. So the answer is yes. Again, that report doesn't even scratch the surface. What it also failed to mention is, why does the community response team, why do they have an agency attorney attached to that unit? Why does an agency attorney travel around with that unit in a uniform? We see the agency attorney wear a complete uniform. It looked like he even had a gun belt. I'm not sure. But it looked like he had a full uniform. Why is an agency attorney attached to this unit? Why is an agency attorney not attached to public safety or neighborhood safety? What's the training the cops have? What's the correlation with the agency attorney? How does the agency attorney play out with this unit? We didn't hear anything about that. So it is a secret. It's a secret squirrel society. Again, I told you in 2022, right before I left and retired, I saw that team emerge, and no one knew anything about it. They never told anybody, hey, expect to see these guys in your precinct wearing khaki pants, quasi-anti-crime team. We had no idea why they were there, what they were doing. There was no information passed on to the precinct. That can be a huge safety problem. Epic fail in the leadership.
Yeah, Chris Arnold says this report reads like a SIMS procedure. Citywide incident management system is what Chris Arnold's talking about. Circle jerk. Ron Layson says this report is 4 pages repeated 6 times to make it 24 pages of fluff. John Clark says CRT is a bunch of clowns running around aimlessly and recklessly, endangering all other MOS as well as civilians. John, I honestly, I have to agree with you. It's sad to say. I mean, I think people are always considering myself and Eric anti-police, and I think it's the furthest from the truth. We're for common sense policing, common sense public safety. We're for the betterment of New York City. These two buffoons really have no business being where they are, being in charge of what they're in charge of. They don't make good decisions. They are a danger to the public, and they're creating units that are also a danger to the public. So let's read this article. A specialized unit focusing on quality of life issues that was formed under Mayor Eric Adams has been operating for more than 2 years without written policies, procedures, and operational guides, and without any required training for its members, according to a report released Tuesday by Inspector General for the NYPD. The NYPD formed the unit known as the Community Response Team with just 18 members in the summer of 2022, with leaders taking to social media to declare the team would tackle problems flagged by New Yorkers, from illegal motorbikes to black market street vendors. By early 23, the unit had expanded and grew to roughly 165 members, gaining a reputation along the way, even amongst some law enforcement, for its aggressive tactics, particularly when it comes to vehicle pursuits. Despite the unit's stated focus on community complaints, the NYPD was unable to provide the Inspector General's office with data supporting its claim that the unit tracks and responds to calls the city's 311 system. The lack of transparency regarding the NYPD's community response team risks non-compliance with the law, ethical breaches, and negative policing outcomes, said OIG Inspector General Janine Barrett. The recommendations in this report encourage the creation of public policies and procedures that will enhance knowledge of confidence in CRT's mission, as well as facilitate future oversight. Before we go further, what do you think about that?
Well, I think the city does a great job. I mean, who's written by Yohan?
Yeah, Yoav.
I think Yohan does a great job, does great investigative work with the ability to put this out with this report that only scratches the surface. But because we have an understanding of the police department, he did a great job laying this out. It completely lacks transparency. Again, nowhere in that report does it indicate any reason why this unit runs around with an agency attorney. It doesn't talk about the training, doesn't talk about the criteria, the qualifications. There's a lot of information about this unit, which should be public information, right? Which is part of transparency, accountability. I mean, this should be more public than the 58. This actually makes sense. I think we talked about it, right? Does it have to have actual minutia of data, specific data of what the arrests are? No, but why they're in specific areas, but it should have a mission statement. What's the focus? And the fact that we're missing a lot of this information of what's the mission, what's the focus, and when we don't have the data to show how they're addressing complaints, why they're addressing complaints, what complaints are addressing, it really leaves these guys very vulnerable. They don't understand that. I'm sure we're going to receive a lot of opposition to it because right now they're under the blanket of protection from John Shell, Jeffrey Matry, and Kaz Daughtry. But I think it leaves them vulnerable for potential civil rights violations. And when this administration eventually leaves, I think these cops are in for some real trouble, especially when it comes to these vehicle pursuits, how they're conducting their stops. Most of these guys don't have much time on the job. So I don't think they really understand the case of People versus DeBoer, Terry versus Ohio, when they conducted these stops, and also how it corresponds with car pursuits, hot pursuit, things like that. So I don't think they really understand it. Not enough with that amount of time on the job. Obviously, the leadership we see is completely inept. So I think these guys are really vulnerable to potential civil rights violations.
Yeah. I mean, I think that she does a great job of fluffing up this report, but I don't think it does. While the CRT team isn't mentioned on the NYPD's website, the unit has been given considerable attention on social media by its founders, Chief of Patrol John Shell and Deputy Commissioner of Operations Kaz Daughtry. In late 22, the duo touted the work of the units cracking down on vehicles with fake ghost plates, street racing, and illegal all-terrain vehicles and scooters activity that was documented in 2 short films produced by the NYPD that hyped the unit's fast-paced and often dangerous work. When the city reported on a 6-fold increase in the NYPD vehicle pursuits during the first 6 months of 23, stemming in part from the work of the CRT, Shell staunchly defended the NYPD's more aggressive tactics, despite the risk to other drivers, bystanders, and police officers. With the enforcement of more moving summons, car stops, and people thinking that they can take off on us, the report quotes him saying in July 23, "Those days are over." More recently, police officials have been publicizing other efforts by the CRT, including removing illegal street vendors from Manhattan sidewalks and targeting alleged brothels along Roosevelt Avenue in Queens, and even getting guns off the street, which had been the primary mission of the anti-crime teams. The NYPD's press office, speaking through an unnamed spokesperson, said, "We thank the DOI for its review and policies and procedures related to the CRT. We look forward to reviewing the report and carefully considering its recommendations." John McCauley, a retired NYPD lieutenant who has been critical of the NYPD's more aggressive vehicle pursuit practices, said the department should release the data regarding the CRT's work, including the number of complaints filed against its members and the number of deaths and injuries that resulted from vehicle pursuits, as well as the number of accidents, right? And property damage and amount of money was being spent on this unit. That's not in there, but that's why I'm saying that. What we're seeing is that the CRT team is not being held accountable, said McCary, who's the host of New York's finest retired Unfiltered podcast. They're shrouded in mystery. In just the past 6 weeks, 2 cyclists were killed in separate incidents during the course of the police vehicle pursuits, according to news reports. The city has sent 10 emails since July 23 to the NYPD's press office, 6 of which CC'd Mayor Adams requesting the data on deaths stemming from vehicle pursuits since 2018. There was no response to the first 9 emails. On Monday, in response to the 10th, the department's press shop said a Freedom of Information request needs to be submitted in order to obtain the data. What do you think about that?
No surprise that they met with reluctance and resistance when it comes to FOIA requests. Again, this is like a secret squirrel society. I really think it's a complete epic fail because I think the cops are really on the hook for this. They don't understand that right now. They're young in their career. They're impressionable rookies, which is why John Shell, Kaz Daughtry, Jeffrey Madry want these guys in the unit. But they don't realize when this administration turns over, these guys are really headed for potential problems. Honestly, I hope that they get themselves out of the unit. I hope they watch this podcast and really look at the lack of transparency in the vulnerable position that they're in. Most likely they won't get it because of the benefits and amenities that they have, and it's really short-sighted, and it's not long-lived. So, you know what? Hats off. Bless to them.
Yeah. Tron Ranger says the CRT is Shell reducing transparency. That's the CRT. The Inspector General has made several recommendations focused on improving accountability and transparency. The IG report noted that its work delving into the CRT will continue, particularly since the NYPD is considering expanding the unit's efforts to every precinct. Wow, really sounds like anti-crime. An investigation planned for the release next year will look at the disciplinary history of officers both before and after they join the CRT and the measurable impact of the unit's enforcement of quality of life issues. So, but nothing on the vehicle pursuits. Okay, got it. Check.
Again, it really leaves questions open. The questions are, why is there an agency attorney? Why is an actually attorney assigned to this unit? What role does he play? I mean, you and I both saw pictures of where he's wearing pretty much an NYPD uniform. He's not a police officer. What does he have? Peace officer status? What type of status does he have? What is he actually doing with this unit? Why do they have an agency attorney? How, what's the training involved? What's the correlation there? And we never heard anything. That is something that should be transparent to the public. This person is not a police officer, yet they run around in this unit with a uniform. In Deputy Commissioner Operations, Kaz Daughtry, the same applies. He's a civilian member of the service now, and he's according to his title, he's running around with a full gun belt in uniform, which is something we never seen before. This unit is completely not transparent. It's obviously John Shell's baby, Kaz Daughtry, and Jeffrey Madgy. But the question is, how will this unit carry on? Once John Shell retires or goes to 500 Pearl Street, same thing for Kaz Daughtry, what will happen with this unit? Will this unit be completely disbanded? It's my guess. It probably will be disbanded because of this report and other factors. I'm sure there's a lot of headbutting on this job when it comes to this unit with John Shell and precinct commanders. I'm sure they have to succumb to it because it's John Shell's baby. But this is a major problem. By the way, great quote that you were quoted in the city by Johan. It's absolutely right. That data information is lacking from this report, and I think it was done completely by design to protect John Shell.
Yeah, there's a lot of data. Like, I want to know how many vehicle pursuits they were involved in. I want to know how many of them ended up in a vehicle crash, how much property damage, how many department vehicles have they damaged. Then let's focus in on their CCRBs and look at it the same way that they look at SRG. How much money and funding does this unit get? The same way they looked at SRG is the same way that CRT should be scrutinized. It's the same exact way. The data proved that the SRG is effective, that they're best suited to do the mission that they're doing. Why are you hiding the data about the CRT? The data should prove that as well. If it doesn't, maybe that's why you're hiding. Maybe that's why it's being hidden. I'm not saying that that's the case. I'm just saying, how do you properly defend your officers if you're not in the position to properly defend them? Using buzzwords like, oh, they're the best trained in the world. Oh, what were they trained in? Oh, I don't know. How many guys you got assigned to you? I don't know. How many cars you guys got? I don't know. How much funding you have? I don't know. To me, completely inept and incompetent. And then this kid that you're talking about, the lawyer, he runs around in uniform. He came on our social media with the captain of the unit that they mentioned in here, with the lieutenants, threatening us, calling us rats, saying he's got more collars than both of us combined. I want to know how he got picked to go in the unit. I want to know who he knows, because I guarantee he's tied to somebody. I guarantee he's a nepotism appointment. I guarantee he's a nepo baby too as well. And you're listening to this right now, hit me up. You come on here. You could tell us. You're always running around. And I agree with you. We don't know anything. Shrouded in mystery is what it is. I think I'm going to steal that from Drone Ranger. Shell removing transparency. CRT. I love it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we really covered the points here pretty well. Usually, these reports are detailed out. There's a lot of information missing. It may seem simple in minutia, but it's very important. Why and what is the purpose of that uniform? It doesn't detail it out. Why are they wearing khaki pants? Why do they have to differentiate themselves from the blue uniform? They're not in plain clothes. They're in uniform. So why are they wearing khaki pants? We know that there's a different uniform for people that are working at the range. We know why. They're identifiable so that that they're actually the ones instructing at the range, right? There's a purpose. There's a mission for it. It makes sense. It's common sense. But what is the purpose of this unit? They're not in plain clothes. They're doing quasi-anti-crime. Why is their uniform different? Why is there actually no uniform? They lay out what is the shirt, what are the pants, how are they identified? Do they wear a name tape? Right? That was very important when it came up about SRG, how they're identified when it comes to protests and these riots and how it equates to what the civilian complaints they received. And we were actually able to prove, based on that data, they actually received less complaints than their counterparts and showed how effective SRG was. We were the only entity that actually fought and combated the CCRB and the city council and actually proved the SRG was actually effective. It should not be disbanded. We didn't hear anything from the police department. So to the NYPD upper echelon, you can thank us when you have an opportunity. You can read that article. We'll post it somewhere. I think we have it on the website. But, I think that completely just lacks information. Again, I'd like to know what's going on with that attorney. And shout out to you, Captain Thomas Kaminsky, for inviting John and I to come out to Watog. Eventually, we should come out to Watog and have a cigar and have a drink with you. So,
I've never been to Watog.
The rough streets.
I don't think I'm ever going either. So I can care less. But all right. So you're the PC. I know first thing. There's two things I'm doing if I'm Jessica Tisch. One is I'm immediately disbanding the CRT. I'm immediately disbanding them. I'm going to say, get these khaki pants out of here. They're not. You will wear the uniform. Pick a command. You're all going back to command. 100%. I'm disbanding the entire unit. I'm taking the people who made detective, and they're actually going to become investigative detectives, right? So I'm actually going to start to make people investigative detectives instead of just giving people a detective shield, pretending you have a lot of detectives when in reality, you don't have a lot of investigative detectives, right? So put those people there. Everybody else go back to command, backfill the commands. The second thing I'm doing is completely wiping the slate clean. Group 1, CO of Internal Affairs, you're out of here. Any executives in there, I'm revamping the internal affairs process. Totally. Would you agree that needs to be done?
Hands down, brother. First thing I would do is remove CRT. These are all young, impressive rookies. Every supervisor that's in there, send them back to precincts, and I would reestablish anti-crime and start to seek out the most qualified cops, the most qualified supervisors. I would stand up to CCRB and say, I don't care what their records are. I would actually delve in to see what the context is of their actual complaints. Absolutely, you're 100% right. We would actually have to make change with the Internal Affairs Bureau. Group 1 have to be immediately revamped. And I think that I would actually seek that Internal Affairs, when it comes to the upper echelon of the police department, it needs to be outsourced, right? If we're investigating the rank and file, very possible. But if we're investigating the upper echelon of the police department, it needs to be done by an outsourced and an independent watchdog, because obviously we can't get a fair assessment and a fair investigation because rank and nepotism have a hold on the job. Absolutely, that has to be done first. But definitely, I would think the key factor to intrusive police work is bringing back anti-crime. And we would have to, I think less is more. We have too many of these units. We have public safety, neighborhood safety, CRT team. We don't need all these units. We need anti-crime team, and we need what we created in PSA 7. And that was not a conditions team. It was a crew suppression team. So we actually had young, impressionable cops. It was kind of like the farm. These guys would then go to anti-crime, but they did crew suppression. And what that was is these guys were responsible to know every gang member in the precinct, know where and what is happening in and around these gangs. And they would focus on that and target shootings with these gangs. Exactly that, the quality of life complaints about these gangs, who their rival gang members were. And they really got to learn the research and analysis of crime. And they would go out there and do intrusive police work. And that would be the step to getting to anti-crime. And we don't have that right now. We don't know what's the step to get to CRT other than, hey, you worked with somebody and that's your buddy. Clearly it lays out nepotism. Major problem. But these are easy fixes. This can be fixed right away.
Yeah, so I agree with you. So we have the neighborhood safety teams. I don't even think we need to reestablish anti-crime because you have it. You have the neighborhood safety teams, right? That's basically anti-crime. I think they just need to be empowered. They need to be given the vehicles. I heard a rumor the other day. I heard a rumor that there are more Craylo vehicles. For those of you that don't know what Craylo is confidential rental autos, basically confidential rental program that the NYPD has where they lease these vehicles that you don't know, like they're unmarked vehicles. It could be weird. It could be anything. It could be a Dodge Durango. It could be whatever it is. There are more vehicles in that fleet than there are in the uniform fleet. I don't know if that's true, but that's the rumor that I was told the other day. I thought that was weird. So I think if you got rid of CRT team, I don't think it matters because I think they overlap the neighborhood safety team. I agree with you. I think those neighborhood safety teams are more effective, more important because you need to understand what's happening in a particular precinct. Those guys and girls are going to know that better than anybody. Then when you look at the borough level, same thing. I don't think you need a citywide unit. I just don't. I don't see how a citywide unit's ever effective unless you're honing in on one thing specifically. Like, when we used to go after the vendors selling unmarked goods or whatever it is. The copyrighted CDs, things like that. I don't think citywide units are that effective. Even citywide graffiti, I didn't think it was effective. I think it needs to be brought down to a precinct level, borough level. I think every type of enforcement, IAB, listen, it's not going to get outsourced immediately. I think immediately Jessica Tisch needs to remove the chief of internal affairs. I think she needs to revamp all of Group 1. Anyone that has came in under this administration has to be removed. And I think you're going to have to restaff internal affairs and operate within the group you have. Clearly, they failed under this administration. I think you need to restore integrity immediately in the NYPD. You need to restore transparency to gain public trust. You need to restore transparency amongst members in the NYPD to regain their trust as well, because that's the other thing. That's the other problem. How, I'm out here working. How do I get to that unit? How do I get that? Why am I getting suspended for this, but this guy's not getting suspended? Why did I get indicted and this guy's getting overtime? Same thing, and I think you need to do that. I think those are going to be her biggest challenges. I don't know that she will or she won't. I'm excited to see what's going to happen. I think she has the ability to do all that. I don't know that she will or she won't. But I think those things need to be done immediately if you're going to get the NYPD in New York City back on track.
I think having a citywide team also in a different uniform and going out there rogue and reckless in the manner that we see that they do creates a safety problem for guys in the precincts. So if you're neighborhood safety, right, or public safety, and you're out there doing intrusive police work, you're going out there and you're doing aggressive police work, right? But there's a difference between aggressive control and aggressive out of control, right? So when you're working in a precinct, you always have to still, even if you're doing aggressive police work, you still have to maintain a good relationship with the people in the precinct because you're there every day. It's almost the place where you live, right? You spend so many hours a day, that's where you're there. So you don't want to be fighting every day. You have to have a good relationship with the community. Now, if you're a citywide response team and you're running on rogue and reckless and you don't care what goes on in that precinct, if you're khaki pants and you're in a precinct, you're running around complete havoc and you're not rubbing elbows with the community. Now, when you leave that community, you create a problem for the neighborhood safety and the public safety guys, and they lose trust and credibility with the community, and they don't care. They're not going to say, "Oh, you're not the guys in khaki pants. You're blue. You're law enforcement. You're NYPD." And they're going to take it out on you. So I think that you should have to be assigned to your precinct because to maintain that relationship with the community, even if when you're out there being aggressive and you're targeting the people that actually hurt the community, you have to have a good relationship with the people that are there wanting a better community. And that's a problem with people out there running citywide. They don't have that relationship. They're transient. They're just passing through. So they might not care of the effects of how they're handling themselves in a particular precinct. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I think that like I said, I think there just needs to be there needs to be a reset in the NYPD immediately, like, or else there's nothing there. Other thing, did you see that this guy Ryan Marola was appointed to chief of staff? So Tariq Shepard's no longer the chief of staff. I don't know that he ever was the chief of staff. Ryan Marola comes from sanitation. So Tish is bringing over a sanitation chief of staff. Problem for me, I don't love that at all. I think she should have picked someone that she knew internally in the NYPD, even if they were a lower rank, someone who understands the inner linings. Maybe it's good bringing someone from the outside. I don't know. So she brings Ryan Marola over. He's her chief of staff. So Tariq Shepard's out. So he's, I guess, the deputy commissioner of public information. Somebody was asking me the other day, how did he get promoted, though, to chief of staff and become back as a uniformed chief, a 3-star chief? I don't know. They asked the question, did he promote himself? That's what it looks like to me. I don't know. What do you think about that, Eric? Like, there was never an order that he was the chief of staff and that he was a uniformed 3-star chief. There was never an order. There was never a promotion that he's given back, because if we know that he would have had to be promoted. He was promoted to deputy commissioner of public information, but he was never promoted to chief of staff. There's no certificate of chief of staff. So he's never promoted back to the uniform. What are your thoughts about that?
So I don't know. I can only assume based on what I see. I think it was a backdoor deal with Adams, because obviously it wasn't with Tom Donlin. I think it was a backdoor deal like, hey, I'll make you chief of staff. I mean, you and I talked about it on a prior episode when Eric Adams initially got indicted and he was going to court. Who was with him side by side? It was always Tariq Shepard. Was driving him around, escorting him. Tariq Shepard was always in his presence. So I think that I think it was a backyard deal with Adams. That's what I think. But it's quite interesting, right? We talk about bringing in someone from outside sanitation for chief of staff. I don't love it. I would like to see, let's not have a chief of internal affairs. Let's have a deputy commissioner of internal affairs. Then bring an outside person from sanitation to run internal affairs, someone that doesn't have a connection to the upper echelon of the police department. That might be a good start. I think that would be the way to go.
Yeah, like I said, I don't know. I didn't know the answer. So I don't know. It looks like he just promoted himself. I don't know. That's crazy, though. Imagine he just one day wakes up. Yeah, I'm a 3-star chief today. I'm going to put this uniform on, put these stars on, and that's it. So.
Well, it wouldn't surprise me. I mean, the guy came out one day in an ESU SWAT uniform. I mean, what was he doing? It was hilarious. I mean, I don't know if I'm hoping. It would be kind of funny if, like, he lost a bet and someone was like, I dare you to go out and wear this uniform. That would be funny. But at some point, you think, hey, someone would tell the public, hey, by the way, I'm not an issue. I'm wearing this. I lost the bet. That would be funny. But I don't think that's why he was wearing it. I think he was just playing cop.
Yeah, and then he's playing 3-Star Chief. He was dressing up for Halloween. So, all right, listen, we got to do a hard out. It's 9:50. Anything before we wrap up?
No, just want to say shout out to everybody. Thank you so much for supporting us. We made a lot of friends, listeners to the podcast. I really appreciate building this network together. We're getting towards the end of the year. We're really starting to build. Let's keep building together. Please like and subscribe and share the podcast. We know there's a lot of people out there. I even know some people that are in the khaki pants unit that I worked with that they're terrified to admit that they worked with me, but I hope they don't get outed. But God bless you. I mean, I'm not a criminal. It's okay. Neither is John. Maybe some of the people you work with criminals. So, but listen, shout out. Honestly, we're building this network together. Like, share, subscribe to this podcast. We appreciate it. We appreciate all the coffee and donut donations to the podcast as always. We'll see you tomorrow morning. We won't keep it long. We know you want to get out there with your families for Thanksgiving, getting ready, making your turkey. So shout out to you. Let us know what you're making tomorrow. We appreciate it. What's your favorite thing, by the way, for Thanksgiving? I like cranberry sauce. That's my I can put that on anything.
I don't love turkey at all. I don't even like anything to do with Thanksgiving, any of the food really. But I'll tell you, I got an organic turkey from a farm in Florida last year, and then we brined it for a few days, and it was really, really good. It was unbelievable. We're not hosting this year, so we're not doing that this year. But next time I do it, I'm going to do that again. But I always, my sister used to always make lasagna for us on Thanksgiving. So it's a weird Thanksgiving tradition, but that's my favorite.
Yeah, and listen. Shout out to people. Shout out to mental health, because usually the holidays are a time of joy, but for some people, it's a rough time of the year. Maybe they lost family members, and I'm sure some people lost family members and they can't join you this Thanksgiving, or there's hardships in life right now, and I saw John McCarry's a communist. That's hilarious.
You can't read the other one, but it's funny.
But if that's the case, please, you have friends here on the podcast. Contact us. We can always share information, but don't be afraid to stand alone. Be proud of yourselves. Hold yourself with dignity. Shout out to Snake Plissken, $4.99. Happy Thanksgiving, everyone. Happy Thanksgiving to you. We appreciate all the comments. We're going to try to continue this idea that we had. So Fridays, to make a kind of a roundtable where mostly it's people on the chat that are involved in your comments and things that you want to discuss. Just have more of like a roundtable. Just like Fun Friday. So if you have any ideas, things you want to get discussed on Friday, let us know. We'll see you there. Shout out. John, thank you so much, brother. Happy Thanksgiving. We'll see you soon.
All right, guys. We'll be back at you tomorrow real quick. Where am I? I lost my place. All right. We're good, guys. We'll see you tomorrow live, 8:05. See you soon.
There's a handful of retired officers that don't live in the state that have a lot to say about the dream team, as I like to call it. All of a sudden, they retire and have a master plan on how to fight crime, but nothing to contribute when they were here. They want to come back and be part of the dream team. What can I say?
Law enforcement professionals dedicate their lives to serving and protecting our community. But who's protecting their financial futures? That's where Laidlaw Blue comes in. Our wealth management platform is specifically designed for the law enforcement community. Laidlaw Blue is a division within Laidlaw Wealth Management, run by retired New York City detective John McDermott. His status as a retired detective uniquely positions him to establish a deep connection between Laidlaw Blue and the law enforcement community. Our platform is easy to use and provides a range of financial services, including investment management, retirement planning, and insurance solutions. With Laidlaw Blue, you can secure your financial future and provide for your loved ones. Our team of experienced financial advisors understands the unique challenges and opportunities that law enforcement professionals face. We're here to help you navigate the complexities of financial planning and achieve your goals. Laidlaw Blue. Secure your financial future today. Book a meeting using the QR code displayed or call us directly on 888 901 blue. That's 888 901 blue.